That's number one. You kind of recently
painful, tender to the touch. May also
same shoulder length and the other. Well, hey everybody, welcome back. Good morning if it's morning for you. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. That's a
playback.
That's a line from what was that movie? The Truman Show.
Yeah, maybe it was.
I think it was.
How funny.
Jim Carrey, yes, as you would say good morning. Anyways, moving on. Welcome to our podcast. Again, this is Real Health with Brandi and Amir. I am Amir Rashidian, Dr. Amir Rashidian, a chiropractor. This is Brandi, is my wife. And Real Health is where we teach you how to feel better, get stronger, live longer, and feel
younger.
There you go.
We're getting so much better.
We're getting better at that. That's right. This is episode number 13. And,
lucky number 13.
Yep. And what we're going to do is, just like all the episodes, we're going to go through the latest news in health, and we're going to give you the wellness perspective on that. Hopefully, we'll give you some ideas on how to, use the information to make your life better, your family's life better, and all of that. So what do you say we jump right in? We saved one from the last podcast.
Yes.
So last time we ran out of time because we were having too much fun. And we didn't talk about this one, but it's important, and I think we need to talk about this, not because of the main point of the article, but because of its health implications long term. And let me just jump right in.
We're talking about salt.
Salt, right? Well,
my children love this,
which is great. Do you know? I used to read this fairy tale about this king that was traveling. This is how they discovered salt. This king was traveling, and he asked his people to kill an animal and cook it for him while they're on the road. And this is before there were actual paved roads and stuff. This is probably years ago. And apparently they cooked it on this one rock, and the meat tasted better than it's ever tasted. And so the king went back to the rock and said, "Bring that rock. I want all my food to be cooked on this rock." And turned out that was salt.
I totally know what he's talking about, because we had a steak cooked on a salt rock once.
Where was that? Ruth's Chris restaurant.
That was so stinking good.
Yeah, that was great. After my Wagyu steak experience, that was the second best steak ever.
You probably now have realized we are not vegetarians.
Yes.
We enjoy
no disrespect to the vegetarians. We love you guys.
Yes. More steak for us.
We just couldn't do it, unfortunately. And so anyways, we're talking about salt. This article is from Everyday Health. The title is, "Are Salt Alternatives Dangerous for People with Kidney Disease?" And the short answer is yep. And
next.
but so is salt. So that's kind of why I said, well, the article is not all that great, because salt can be bad for people with kidney disease, and salt alternatives can be bad for people with kidney disease. So a proposed FDA rule would allow food producers to replace table salt with a potassium-based salt alternative. Kidney disease patient advocacy groups are sounding the alarm. So now you might be thinking, I thought potassium was good for you. I'm supposed to eat bananas so I can get potassium. Well, there's other sources of potassium that are good, like avocados actually have a better source of potassium, and so are dried apricots. So less sugar in those two, and good quality fats in avocados. So if you get a lot of muscle cramps, so low potassium can cause muscle cramps. We'll get into that a little bit. Let me tell you what the article says. The kidneys usually remove waste, minerals, and extra fluid from the body, but kidney disease interferes with those processes, making excessive potassium a concern. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration announced a proposed rule earlier this month that would allow food manufacturers to use salt substitutes in place of the real thing. The public health measure is aimed at reducing the amount of added sodium in foods, which is, again, this is the problem I have with this article, is most of the sodium we get is not from salt. Most of the sodium we're eating is in processed foods. They add sodium to everything. Have you ever opened a package of, I won't say the brand name, But you know those noodles that are wrapped in paper or the plastics that you prepare them in 3 minutes. Look at how much sodium is in that, and then look at how much sodium is in anything that comes in a box.
Isn't it used partially as a preservative?
I think so. I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up.
Okay.
But sounds right. But that's why a lot of processed stuff, things you get off shelves, things in packaging, usually have high sodium. So you know. I don't think salt is the problem. So replacing sodium salt with potassium salt, I don't know if it's going to solve the high sodium issue
How
of
about
most
we
people.
start eating more fresh fruits and vegetables and food prepared at home and less processed food? Maybe if we start there.
I think the vegetarians just applauded. I heard them.
They like me.
We like them.
Yes.
So yeah, I think you're right. I mean, that would be the simple thing to do. And the article doesn't mention that at all.
Right.
It says 90% of Americans ages 2 and up consume too much salt. And again, I don't think they do. How many 2-year-olds put too much salt on their food? I don't think they make their own food. So anyways, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which contributes to the high burden of chronic disease seen across the nation. One of the proposed substitutes is potassium chloride, also known as potassium salt. Provides a similar flavor without the negative effects of sodium, but advocates for people with kidney disease, anyways, kidney people are saying that's bad for you, don't do it. Kidney disease prevents the body from excreting sodium. Among other things, I mean, kidney disease is very complicated. It's not a simple thing. There's the various stages to kidney disease. If you ever look at your blood work, there's a line that says EGFR. E is estimated glomerular filtration rate. So it tells you how well your kidneys are filtering your blood. But now a lot of people will say high protein diets, if you eat a lot of steak, can affect your kidneys as well. I don't know if that's true. I've seen studies and experts talk about both sides of that. A lot of bodybuilders say, nope, a high protein diet does not affect your kidneys. And vegetarians will say high protein diet hurts your kidneys.
Interesting. I mean, I think we all know that balance is really important, right? And so a lot of times what I think happens is we have people in extremes, right?
Yes.
But I don't always think that's the norm. So sometimes these fixes are for those that are in that extreme, you know, somebody who does not eat freshly made food and vegetables.
Correct. Now, would you say I eat fresh foods and vegetables?
I am certain of it because I meal prep you.
Right.
So, yes.
So, yet, since I've increased my protein intake, my blood work shows my kidney function has gone down.
Interesting.
So it makes me think probably high levels of protein intake do stress the kidneys.
I wonder if there are other things too, behaviorally, that's happening. I mean, can workouts, can high levels of exercise tax the kidneys?
Intense workouts will cause your liver enzymes to go up.
We've experienced that before.
Yep. And it can affect the kidney as well. Yeah. So I think next time I do my blood work, I might take a few days off from working out.
Yeah.
And maybe even fast a couple days and see if my kidneys.
And we're not talking about like light workouts where you go in, you're doing like 15 or 20 minutes on a treadmill and heading out. Like his workouts are substantial, you know, like other, you know, bodybuilders and things like that. You're going in and you're doing these really heavy lifting. You are taxing the body immensely, right? For a benefit, of course, but it still is it's a big tax on the body.
Yeah, which causes breakdown of tissue so it can repair bigger. And so that breakdown still releases material in your blood that needs to be filtered out and so on. Now, an estimated 37 million American adults, or about 15% of the population, live with chronic kidney disease, a condition that disproportionately impacts people of color, according to the CDC. I don't like looking at race and ethnicity issues, but what I do know is I have a lot of patients We have a lot of patients who have had kidney issues. Um, uh, we've had people who've had kidney transplants. And one thing I know, if you're part of this population of 37 million people, I feel for you, because there are these dialysis centers
Mm,
where they go and sit for, I don't know, between 2 and 8 hours
yeah.
at a time, and their bod, a machine acts like their kidneys and filters their blood. And if you ever sit in one of these places and see how people look when they come in,
Yeah.
you will know how important kidneys are.
Oh, yeah.
They literally don't look good.
Yeah.
They look like they're suffering, they're hurting, they are not in good shape.
Yeah.
So please take good care of your kidneys. And
Really, we need all our organs. They were put there for a reason.
yep.
So be kind to them.
So people with kidney disease, if they eat too much potassium, the mineral can accumulate in their blood. Elevated levels of potassium in the blood, a condition called hyperkalemia, can cause abnormal heart rhythms and even sudden cardiac death. Interestingly, I think, and I did a little digging on this, high levels of sodium can cause death also. But so let's go through that real quick.
I mean,
What do you
any
think?
electrolyte balance, right? Because
Yeah,
that's kind of
yeah,
that's what we're getting into,
yeah.
right?
It's
Um,
true.
I know that from like loved ones that have, suffered with cardiac issues, with heart issues, or respiratory issues. One of the hardest things is balancing their meds and balancing their electrolytes,
Yeah,
right? Because one will increase while another decreases something else, and then
yeah.
it is really hard to get the body balanced once it's.
Yeah. So I want to premise this because I did not personally see this research.
Mhm.
When I was in chiropractic school decades ago, one of our professors, when we were studying kidney and kidney diseases, told us that the research shows that not everybody is sodium sensitive. So, because one of the biggest problems they say with high sodium is it raises blood pressure. So they go, if your blood pressure goes up, stop eating salt. But this professor told us in the class that only 10% of the entire population is sodium sensitive.
Wow.
That's the only population that needs to cut salt if their blood pressure goes up. And he said, he recommended, again, this isn't me, I'm just repeating what I heard from after the last mistake I made. I want to clarify where this comes from. He said that they recommend, if you want to know if you're sodium sensitive and you don't have blood pressure problems right now, like your blood pressure is normal, he said eat a tablespoon of salt,
Hmm.
and then check your blood pressure every 10 or 15 minutes and see if it spikes. If your blood pressure doesn't go up after eating a table teaspoon, maybe he said teaspoon of salt, you can mix it with water and drink it. And he said if your blood pressure doesn't spike, you're not sodium sensitive. So cutting sodium isn't going to lower your blood pressure either.
Interesting.
So it's an experiment, it's a test. The same thing we do with sugar. That's how they check how well we metabolize sugar. They make you
Right.
drink. Didn't they do that with you when you were pregnant?
Yeah, I fight him a little bit on that
They
stuff
make
because
you drink this sugar liquid. Apparently, is very this it's way too sweet, but it's disgusting and slimy. And then they
women, there are alternatives. So there
yes,
are things, if you don't want to drink the drink that they are giving you, there are alternatives. So you can call the lab beforehand and ask them what the alternatives are for that. So
oh nice.
yeah.
But do it at home too. I think everybody should have a blood glucose monitor
Hmm.
and a ketone monitor,
Right.
and find out what your blood sugar is. Once a week, check your blood sugar fasting before you eat anything. Right after you wake up, check your blood sugar. And then also every once in a while, when you eat a meal, check your blood sugar right before you eat, right after you eat, and then every 15 minutes for about an hour and a half.
Right.
Just to see what happens to your blood sugar when you eat. It shouldn't spike too high. It should level out. It should go up after you eat. It should come back down after a while. So watch that and look at it.
Just like the podcast, these things are about knowledge. It's about learning what questions to ask and about how to gather data, right? Because that's what we're doing. We're reading through these articles and going, what does that mean? Hey,
Right.
what about this? I remember hearing this. And it's about diving in and just pulling these things apart so you can figure out what's really going on.
True.
Same thing we have to do with our health. We have to start digging deeper and not just looking at one symptom, not looking at two symptoms, not looking at just this particular system of the body
Yes.
or this body part, but going, okay, how does that work together?
Right.
Because we can't take anything and isolate it and not look at everything
Yeah.
else. Our body is like this super massive
It's
computer, and
complicated.
it's so complicated we don't know how a lot of these processes even work.
Someone said if you turn a single cell in the human body, one cell, like your skin cell or your bone cell or your liver cell, into a spaceship, it would be so large and so complicated and so intricate, there's no technology that could create it.
That's so cool.
Just one microscopic cell. And then one thing the article talks about is most people don't know. Most people who have chronic kidney disease don't even know they have it, which is why it gets so bad. Now we know that when they're treating blood pressure, that affects kidneys. So people who have decreased kidney function and are taking angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors or ACE inhibitors or angiotensin 2 receptor blockers, or ARBs, or another drug called spironolactone, could be affected by increased potassium in foods, since they make it more difficult for a person's body to excrete potassium. But there are medications that can prevent this. So now some people with blood pressure hypertension are taking diuretics, which deplete the body of potassium.
Right. Well, which is what I'm talking about.
You really have to be careful. ARBs, for example, they decrease reabsorption of sodium in your kidneys. So you stop reabsorbing the sodium. You also stop reabsorbing the water, and it drops your blood pressure. And actually reduces pressure inside the kidneys, which makes the kidneys better. So a lot of times, somebody might not have high blood pressure, but they still give them ARBs or ACE inhibitors because their kidneys aren't working right, which means they can lower their blood pressure too much. We want to watch all of that. Anyways, but at the end of the article, they talk about how actually the overall benefit outweighs the harm, and it only is dangerous if you already have kidney disease, you already have blood pressure issues, you're already on medications. So be super careful. But so somebody might be wondering, what is sodium? What is sodium? Low sodium in the body can cause. So it has to get really low. It can cause nausea, vomiting, and loss of energy. Now, there's the sodium potassium pump, which helps nerve conduction. You studied this in neurophysiology. If you've taken human biology, you study any kind of neurology. That's how nerves conduct the action potential and the transmission of nerve signal from the brain to the various body tissues. It's the sodium potassium pump. So when that balance changes, there's an action potential. It's electrical.
Wow.
And that's how electrical signals go into the body from the brain. So sodium is important, so is potassium, and there's a
Does
pump.
that mean that it would have the potential of slowing down those messages?
Well, the action potential is typically all or none. So it either fires or it doesn't fire,
Interesting.
which is why it's dangerous. But also, like, your heart has its own electrical system, has its own nervous system. And so when sodium potassium balance is lost, your heart can stop. Suddenly it can stop, and it's called cardiac arrest. High sodium, they say, is linked to hypertension and fluid retention. So swelling, like edema, swelling of ankles and feet, and shortness of breath, headaches, and increased thirst. So you got all this fluid in your body, you're retaining fluid, and you're always thirsty. That means you have too much sodium in your body. And when it comes to potassium, low potassium causes cramps, muscle cramps, not menstrual cramps, muscle cramps. But it can also cause confusion because it does affect nerve function in the brain. It can cause constipation and irregular heartbeat. We talked about how potassium affects the heart. May impair kidneys' ability to concentrate urine. So then you lose more urine, which leads to increased urination and an imbalance in electrolytes in the body. High potassium will affect your heart rate, also cause palpitations, shortness of breath, nausea, and vomiting.
Wow.
So that's why, sometimes in hospitals, there was an article we were studying. In one hospital, they accidentally gave someone too much potassium and they died. They put too much potassium accidentally in their IV, and their heart stopped and died. So, anyways, let's move on. That's all we have on kidneys and salt, and we got a good one coming up.
We're going to talk about another item that can have an effect on
Yep.
the heart.
Most of you have ingested this, and a lot of you love it.
Yes, some of us too much. So, NBC News Health, how about coffee? How much coffee is too much? What experts and research say about where to draw the line. So I know what I used to drink and what I drink now are vastly different, because I've experienced some of the fatigue too that can come from,
Oh yeah, withdrawal.
yeah, well, and just the adrenal fatigue,
That's right.
of having this. So we'll get to some of that. Here's how the article starts. As summer iced coffees turn into seasonal fall lattes, it could be easy to reach for an extra cup of coffee throughout the day for a jolt of energy, a mood boost, or sugary afternoon treat. But along with the temporary pick-me-up, research has continued to show that longer-term effects of coffee include a decreased risk of cancer, heart failure, type 2 diabetes, and even death. So already we're saying we have to be cautious. Too much which I think we've been saying, right? Too much of anything.
Too much is bad for you.
Right.
Shocking.
So,
Surprise.
I don't know why we're always surprised to hear this. So what we all need to know is, where do we draw the line?
Put salt in your coffee.
Well, maybe not.
Put potassium salt in your.
Be cautious.
Don't do that.
All right. So how much coffee is too bad for you? And it's not just about coffee. The Food and Drug Administration recommends that people cap their daily caffeine intake at 400 milligrams.
That's
If you're anything like me, 400 milligrams doesn't mean too much.
It's
I need
a
that
lot.
broken down. How about 4 or 5 8-ounce cups of coffee? That is a lot. So they're saying 4 to 5 ounces, or 4 to 5 8-ounce cups of coffee.
A typical cup. So I think this cup holds 12. So
Right.
it'd be so this, if you fill this with coffee, this actually has decaf in it right now, but fill it in with coffee, it would be 120, probably maybe 150 milligrams of caffeine.
Well, but here's my challenge with this statement is that we've kind of generalized this, and I don't know if most people know that there is a huge discrepancy between how much caffeine is in different types of coffee. So if you're looking at like a drip coffee, something you'd make at the coffee maker at home or out of your Keurig, versus going and getting a latte or a cappuccino, that can be vastly different. I think there's probably for some an assumption that getting one of those more expensive lattes or cappuccinos, from one of our well-known coffee shops probably has more caffeine, but that is a misnomer. And your drip coffee contains way more caffeine, and the range is so wide. So brewed coffee, an 8-ounce cup, can have as little as 95 milligrams, but on average, it's 170 to 220 milligrams for an 8-ounce cup of coffee. That's tremendous. So I think they need to change this data, and instead of saying cups of coffee, we need to really talk about how many milligrams of caffeine, because that's really what we're talking about. It's about the caffeine, not about the coffee. So for an 8-ounce latte, you're looking at 63 milligrams, or 63 to 68 is what I read.
Yeah, it's less. Well, because there's more milk.
Correct, but not in a cappuccino. In a cappuccino, there's usually still a small amount. A latte has a lot more.
Right.
But still, you got to be really cautious of that. Okay, so what are some of the serious side effects of caffeine? Erratic heartbeat, vomiting, seizures, diarrhea, even death. Unless they consume 1,200 milligrams or at least 12 cups a day. Right? Is that most people are unlikely to experience the side effects like erratic heartbeat, vomiting, seizures, and diarrhea, and even death, unless they consume 1,200 milligrams or about 12 cups of coffee a day. So they're saying the threshold here, you could be safe at 4 to 5 8-ounce cups of coffee when you start hitting about 12 cups or 1200 milligrams, which seems so excessive, you might want to slow down. But it's not just
Well,
those.
how much does a full pot of coffee hold? How many ounces?
Uh,
I think
that's
it's
it.
like,
It's usually like 6 to 8 cups, and I think they're basing it on 8-ounce cups, but I would have to double check.
yeah. So they basically are drinking a
Several
pot
cups
and a
of
half.
coffee. Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Several pots of
Like,
coffee.
yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Don't do that. We can talk about how coffee works in the body.
Let's do that.
So obviously it gets absorbed into your blood, and then it has an effect on the brain, on your adrenals. And one of the things it does is it blocks adenosine. Adenosine, and you may know adenosine when you studied biology, it was ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is the current energy currency of your cells. So your mitochondria produce ATP, and that acts like energy. But adenosine by itself causes you to get sleepy. So it's responsible for promoting sleep and relaxation. And so the caffeine molecule is very similar to adenosine, and it hits those receptors, or it blocks those receptors so adenosine can't get to it, and it
Ah,
stops sleepiness. So it doesn't.
wake you up.
One side of it is that it's not just waking you up, it's also stopping the sleepiness, or the feeling
Interesting.
of being able to relax. um, it does cause the release of neurotransmitters. So the main ones would be dopamine and norepinephrine. Dopamine is that feel good
Hmm.
neurotransmitter. It gets released when your phone dings and you have a new message, or you get excited about something, or whatever it might be. You're
Swiping
checking
right
your
or left
emails.
has
Yeah,
now been known to give a
release
dopamine release.
dopamine. That's right. Which is which? It's not a
I,
political thing, right? It's not
it
Democrat,
is not.
Republican,
It is not, but I
right and
don't
left.
know. I don't know which is
Which
which.
we're too old to know what swipe right and left means. What's left is bad.
Oh, okay.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Sean.
Sean.
Left is bad, right
We
is
have
good.
somebody young enough in the room who can educate us. Appreciate that,
Very
friend.
much appreciate that. Left is bad. Okay, but now dopamine gets released when you swipe right, and also norepinephrine is basically adrenaline. It's released by your kidneys or the adrenal glands on top of the kidneys. It's not the kidneys; it's on top of the kidneys. It's basically causes a release of adrenaline. So some people can drink coffee and they don't get they're wired and they don't wake up. It's because they have adrenal fatigue. They're not releasing adrenaline, or they may be depleted in dopamine. Now, one of the things that happens with caffeine is you develop tolerance to it. So the
Hmm.
very first cup of coffee you ever drank woke you up big time, but the
Big
next
time.
one did less and less and less. Sugar and cocaine release dopamine, and again, it's the same thing. A little bit of cocaine, you get a big burst of dopamine, and you get that amazing feeling, and then you need twice as much.
Yep.
Chocolate does the same thing. A little piece of chocolate will release dopamine, but if you want the same amount of dopamine, you need double that chocolate.
Yeah.
If you want the same amount the next day, you need 4 times the same chocolate, and eventually chocolate's not going to release dopamine unless you sit down, eat a big chocolate cake.
Which is part of the problem with then drinking a coffee with a lot of sugar in it, because now
Yes.
you're having, because it's a fake me out, right? The coffee is a neurologic fake me out, kind of
Yes.
on a pick me up.
Yes.
Sugar is the same. It operates a little differently, right? But
Yeah.
it still is still kind of that nervous system fake me out.
Right.
So when you then have your coffee and you have 50 milligrams of sugar on
Yeah.
top of it, you're screwing yourself.
Oh yeah, you literally get addicted to sugar. A lot of
Like,
children are addicted. I had a little child. She's 10 years old, and she cannot stop eating sugar. She's addicted to it, and I guarantee you, if you take her off the sugar, she's gonna go nuts for a while. It's the same thing. Dopamine is the same thing that gets you addicted to video games. There's certain video games where people are like playing them 24 hours a day, they can't stop. And when you take away that video game, they go crazy. It's again because of the dopamine addiction that they've developed. Um,
limit your children.
Right, video games. Caffeine also causes constriction of blood vessels, which is like vasodilation, or dilation of blood vessels is what leads to some certain headaches. So there are certain headache medications that have acetaminophen for pain, and they also have
Caffeine.
caffeine to constrict the blood vessels, and the combination tends to stop headaches. The caffeine also acts as a let's see, we talked about the norepinephrine, dopamine. It affects your digestive system. So one of the things it does is apparently relaxes the digestive muscles, like the muscles of your intestines. But I also know that it causes bile release, so it can act like a laxative. So the
Yeah.
minute you drink coffee,
Especially on an empty stomach, right?
yeah, your brain tells the gallbladder to flush the bile into your uh, small intestine, and bile acts like a lubricant. It like emulsifies things and gets things to move. The purpose of bile is to help dissolve fat or emulsify fat so you can digest fat better. People who have had their gallbladder removed need to supplement with bile salts.
Hmm.
And I know a lot of people have had their gallbladder
Yeah.
removed, and I know they've been told wrongly that they don't need to do anything, that they didn't need their gallbladder to begin with. It's just a useless organ that sits there, and is absolutely not true. You need your gallbladder. Don't have it taken out if it's not necessary. If it is necessary, you're going to take bile salts as a supplement with every meal to make sure you're digesting your food properly and you're saving your intestines.
That's awesome.
And we talked about how tolerance develops to it. So that's basically how caffeine works in the human body.
The other thing, I had to giggle a little bit about it, saying if you can't sleep at night, well, you might want to also watch what time you're drinking your coffee, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not fatigued, right, and you are experiencing that pick me up, you may want to make sure you cut it by 2 to 4 o'clock. Check to see what your sensitivity is and how long it's in your system. If you drink coffee after 4 o'clock, you do not.
I don't sleep well.
You don't sleep well.
Coffee has a half-life of 3 hours. So if you drink 100 milligrams at noon, 3 hours later, which would be 3 p.m., you still have 50 milligrams in your system. At 6 p.m., 6 hours later, you still have 25 milligrams in your system.
Yeah.
And at 9 p.m., you still have 12 milligrams in your system. So it just gets cut in half.
Yeah. So be cautious of that. And I'm assuming, I don't know, but this is how my brain works. Even if you are in adrenal fatigue and you're still drinking coffee late, right? And you don't get that massive pick me up, I would think, and tell me if I'm wrong, that you probably still have an effect happening in the nervous system.
Yes.
Right? And so, because even though you don't feel it at the same level, it doesn't mean nothing is happening. So I think sometimes we tie most of our health to how we feel, right? And this is one thing we work on really teaching our patients is only less than 10% of the nervous system is dedicated to how you feel and pain transmission or whatever the case may be. So don't use that as your baseline for how healthy you think you are or how things are affecting you.
Yeah.
Because there's still an effect. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes that we're not aware of. So just a couple more things on this article. There's definitely a couple more pages here, but we already talked a little bit about adrenal fatigue, which I wanted to bring out. And also remember pregnancy. We talked about this before. If you're pregnant or nursing, you should not be drinking 4 to 5 cups of what we would consider okay.
I know the article said you can have 2 cups.
200 milligrams.
200 milligrams, but I wouldn't.
Yeah, we limited to 1 cup. I'm not saying get rid of your coffee, right? When I was pregnant, you have to, talk with your doctors, know your body, see how you feel, but less is going to be more. So I love the flavor of coffee. I like how it feels in my hand. It's probably that dopamine release, right? I'm like, oh, this is so lovely. So it's
nice to just hug that mug.
Yeah. And to know that I really wanted to have that 2 cups, I would just do half calf. And so I would still get my 2 cups,
You'd
but
get
I
the
would
volume with less caffeine.
Exactly. And it was kind of, I could trick myself into thinking that was enough. So
I want to do a study, like a placebo study, or give people decaf and say, this is highly concentrated, high caffeine coffee.
Yeah.
Drink it slow, be very careful, and see if they get wired.
Yeah.
See if they wake up.
Oh, I bet some would.
I'm sure they would.
Placebo is powerful.
100%,
so powerful.
Always.
So the last thing that they do mention in here, which I think is worth speaking about, is caffeine in kids. There is such a huge push now in marketing caffeine to children.
Energy drinks.
A lot of people just allow their kids to drink soda unregulated, and do not think about the amount of caffeine and sugar, not to mention high fructose corn syrup, which is actually so dangerous, and something we need to be looking at. Um, so watch those things. Watch the caffeine intake. Watch the sugary sodas. Watch the giving them coffee, caffeine and coffee. You still need to really watch.
When I went to college, I hadn't had caffeine because my parents said I'm not allowed to have coffee until I'm 18 years old. So I started college. I turned 18 a couple weeks into my freshman year of college. And first thing I did was grab a small cup of coffee, and it woke me up. It woke me up, made me so alert, so wired that I said, I'm going to save myself for finals time. So I waited, and I didn't have any more coffee until final exam time. And when it was time for my final exams, I would go have a small cup of coffee, and I would study and learn, and I was alert and awake and tons of energy, and then I wouldn't drink any coffee again until final exams next semester.
That's
And then I would get coffee because I didn't want my body to develop tolerance to it. But so anyways, yeah, it's not good for children.
Yeah, and there's what's really funny is I think about there are some parents who go, so this is a totally different leads into a different topic which we won't talk about today, but they go, "Oh, it's fine. I give my elementary school child coffee and they are so relaxed. It doesn't wire them at all." Right? There are, and that leads into like some kids who have ADD and ADHD, and then how caffeine can have a reverse effect.
Yeah.
Right. So that'll be, I'm sure there will be an article that pops up and we can bring that
We'll
out
chat
later.
about ADHD, that's for sure. Now, you wanted to give a shout out to the wonderful people at Homewood.
Yeah, we had a really fun week this week. We had an opportunity to go out to a retirement community here in Frederick, Homewood. Let me just tell you, I was so impressed with how clean this facility
We
was.
want to go live there.
Yes, I'm making my reservation. So don't worry, kids, you don't have to worry about us. Yeah, it's just a beautiful facility. They have so much to offer their residents. We had a great group of people. It was the talk that we did
Did
was
you
being
notice all the
televised.
residents were fit? Like
Yeah,
they're physically, they looked healthy.
they are so active. They
Yeah.
have so many activities, great workout room, an indoor pool. Like these residents are living it up. Great walking paths. I was just so impressed. And we had people, they were watching us on their closed TV channels because they were live streaming the talk, and they were coming in and out, and they were like, I was watching this and I just said, I need to get down there. So they were racing down to the room, and we just had so much fun. They were just such a great audience. So thank you so much for letting us come out. And we look forward to coming out and doing more talks with them. And
There are a lot of studies on posture and longevity, and that at
huge.
some point we may want to dedicate a podcast to that, why your posture is so powerfully important for
Yeah.
heart health, lung health, oxygen saturation, mood, brain function. There's so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, it is. So that was a lot of fun.
Now we ran out of time, so we're gonna have to say goodbye. But I do want us to make sure next time we start with some stem cell
Oh my gosh.
findings. There's some new information about stem cells and what they've done with them, and let's start with that next time.
And you have no idea. I dug a little deeper, and there's other things going on with
Okay.
stem cells. So this is going to be a really big
Cool.
topic.
You
We may
can-
try to
you
pull a
can
few more.
Lead that one next week.
Sounds good.
Well, that's it for episode 13. Love and appreciate you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you're listening on a platform, on a podcast platform, we're grateful for you. Hopefully we can keep bringing you wonderful content, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. Please give us feedback. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know how we can improve. Let us know what you want us to talk about.
Absolutely.
What's relevant, what's important. We want to bring all of that to you. Like, for example, the reason I talked about how coffee works in the body is because one of our viewers said, please talk about how coffee works in the body, because I'm just really curious. How does it work?
Yeah.
So I'm going to call him up and say, we did it.
Yeah, that's
Make
right.
sure you listen. Anyways, thank you. If you want to help us get the word out, you are more than welcome to subscribe and share and like the video. We would so appreciate that. Take care. Bless you, and see you next time.